And now, deaf culture, as I share some perspective with you. And in today's course, I would like to discuss what is the politically correct way to define a person who can't hear. There's a lot of people that meet a deaf person and they say, how do I describe them? Are they deaf? Are they hearing impaired, maybe? Handicapped or disabled? Are they deaf mute? Are they deaf and dumb? Oh, no, no, no. But I know that there's people that struggle with that. What is the correct way to describe a deaf person? And I want to just touch on that briefly. The best way to describe a person who can't hear is by calling them deaf. However, not all deaf people are deaf. There are some who are hard of hearing who might describe or define themselves as deaf. Now, hard of hearing means they have some type of hearing loss. And there's also another group of people that became deaf late in life. So what is the difference between the three? Let me give you an example. Being deaf means that you sign, you use ASL primarily. Now, if you're hard of hearing, that means you might use some sign language or you might not, but you rely on speaking. Now, a late deaf person usually never knew sign language. They became deaf in their 50s or 60s, late in life. So that group of people probably they prefer to be called late deaf. Not deaf because they don't associate themselves with other deaf people. I'm not deaf, I just lost my hearing late in life. So going back to the real question, when you meet a deaf person, do you use the word hearing impaired? Well, let's think about that word for a moment. Impaired. What does that mean to you? Well, it means something's wrong, right? Impaired. Now, for example, a visually impaired person, is that a correct way to describe them? Or would you say a blind person? I would say most blind people don't mind being called blind. Visually impaired is more of, well, something's wrong. I'm not impaired because I've never seen in the first place. And that's the same idea with the deaf person. I'm not impaired because I've never heard in the first place. So the word impaired, where did it come from? From state legislators, from Congress, who writes the bills, and they define that group of people as such. So that's how the word hearing impaired came about. The best way to describe an individual who can't hear is calling them deaf. Now let's discuss other words. Handicap. Is that a good word to describe a group of deaf people? There's a lot of deaf people out there that feel, hey, I'm not handicapped. Now, there might be another group of people that have disability issues, and they might classify or label themselves as handicapped, but as a whole, the deaf community does not call ourselves handicapped because really, when you think of it, people usually envision a wheelchair. When you hear the word handicap, you think of a blue sign in the parking lot with the handicap. So for deaf people, we don't use that word. Let's talk about another word, disability. Again, where did that word come from? From Congress, from our legislators. They use the word disability to label us. It's a way of labeling a group of individuals. So now, if we start going back and thinking about the word disability, what does it even mean? Not able, not ability. So a lot of deaf individuals feel like disability is not a great way to describe us, even though the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, has helped us so much. But again, remember, Congress wrote that law. We didn't come up with that. And we're very proud to be deaf. We're very proud to be in wheelchairs, and we're very proud to be blind. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I encourage you, if you're just wondering, well, how should I describe that person? Ask them, do you prefer to be called deaf or hard of hearing? and they will be happy to answer. And it's the same with individuals in a wheelchair or who are blind. Just ask and be direct as opposed to just saying, well, everybody uses them. I'm going to describe them that way too. So we have to be careful here in America. As you know, America is very famous for labeling. And if you want to be politically correct, it's always a good idea to ask, and you'll always get the right answer. Okay?